All across Canada, patients and doctors are asking for change.
Doctors would know my name, not just my symptoms.
They would understand our culture.
We would be empowered to treat patients and teach students.
To leverage AI so we can improve our quality of care.
Through a bold new approach to medical education, the Toronto Metropolitan University School of Medicine is creating that change.
Attention hospital HR in Canada, are you in search of the perfect insurance solution for your part-time and casual employees? Look no further. Meet Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, your go-to option for ensuring the well-being of your team.
With healthcare providers, also known as HCP, you're not just providing insurance, you're providing peace of mind. HCP's comprehensive coverage includes medical, dental, and vision benefits designed to keep your part-time employees happy and healthy. There's even a package that includes life, long-term disability, and accidental death, disease, and dismemberment coverage for those who already have other group health and dental coverage.
It's time to bridge the gap between full-time and part-time staff benefits. With Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, you can level the playing field and show your commitment to all of your team members.
Join the community of over 145 hospital sites who have made the smart choice. Visit healthcareproviders.ca today to discover how HCP can help you support your team in a meaningful way.
Is this thing on?
I think they can hear us a bit better now. Do you think they are ready to change the status quo?
It's one thing to get them listening, but now let's get them to act.
You are now about to witness the strength of nursing knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to the Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered and unapologetic podcast which discusses health and healthcare. My name is Amie.
My name is Sarah.
And we are your hosts.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. Google, Spotify, iTunes, or our YouTube page. Please rate and review us.
Make sure you get our book, The Wisdom of Nurses. There's no better gift than giving the wisdom of nurses to nurses during Nursing Week.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Gritty Nurse Podcast. My name is Sarah.
And my name is Amie.
And we are your podcast hosts. So just to start off with this episode, you can probably tell my voice is a little bit off. This kind of
sounds like this all the time.
I don't always sound like Marge Simpson. If this is the first time you're tuning in, I have lost my voice a little bit. It's a lot better than it was last week, but this kind of dovetails into our topic for the week. I feel like the world is a really heavy place right now. So we're going to do a little bit of a fun, lighthearted episode.
Yep, we need to
and
every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think this will be fun. At least I hope it'll be fun for you guys. So Amie, do you want to tell everyone what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so, kicking off the month of October, because I love all things scary. We have to talk about something scary. Well, not necessarily from the books of horror, but maybe it is a horror adventure in terms of when you go on vacation and something awful happens and maybe you don't have travel insurance or, you're just so far away from home. So it's kind of like the whole scary what happens when you're sick or away on vacation. And man, there's so many stories about people who've, traveled away, got stuck. I think the biggest one probably is, when COVID hit and all those people were on cruise lines and it was just oh no, I'm laughing. I really should not be laughing. I'm just saying how awful it was in terms of all these people being trapped really on a cruise ship and having this, unknown at that particular time illness. So could you imagine being far away from home and being sick? What's scarier than that?
Right. And like we always say, you never stop being a nurse, right? So even though Amie went on her first vacation, ever since we started the podcast, was gone for 2 weeks. I was gone for a week and a half, and we were ready to just shut ourselves off from the world. Healthcare has a way of kind of like
Healthcare
sneaking in all the time. And so we want to share some stories about our time away. No, we were not together, but
No.
we were away at the same time. And, you know, just the fact that you never stop being a nurse and some of the skills that you do have a nurse come in handy, definitely when stuff like this happens. So and I don't know how you want to talk about this episode, but maybe we can kind of share stories and go back and forth.
Sounds good.
Do you want to start with one of your stories, Amie?
Sure. I'll start with the story actually of not of my family, because that one will come a little bit later. But I want to share again, like Sarah said, when your healthcare mind comes in and kicks in, it just does not go away. And this is actually one of the things that we talked about in our book, where it's just like, once you're a nurse, you're always a nurse, and you're always like, whether it's examining for veins or, you know, whatever the case may be, it always crops up. And for me, I don't know, I have this strange sense about myself where I land in these situations where there's that, I guess, that conflict where it's like, do I say something? Do I provide care? And you feel like, oh, I don't know if I should, but you know, at the end of the day, I end up usually intervening. Anyhow, this story takes place in Jamaica because, you know, of course, that's where I wanted to go. Best vacation in a long time. And it actually started with, of course, with us being in the water. So this is very bizarre. We were at a water park at our resort. And there was a couple in the water, and I saw her come. She was like walking around with her husband, and I noticed when she was out of the pool that one of her legs was substantially bigger than her other. So we definitely know that that means something. So of course, my nursing mind came on, and I was just like, you know, I really hope that wherever she's coming from, she doesn't have a DVT.
And that stands for deep vein thrombosis, for any of you non-medical folk.
Yes.
Very serious condition.
Yeah. So a clot in her leg. And it just, for me, I was like, I think that is what I'm seeing. Anyhow, we're in the water. We intervene with this couple. We meet with this couple again. I didn't say anything on my first initial kind of like seeing these people, because I was like, don't do it, Amie. Don't intervene. You're on vacation. Just enjoy yourself. And again, we see the couple in the water, and they actually interacted with us. And I was like, opportunity. So I was there with my daughter, and they're like, oh, she's so beautiful. She's so cute. They're from the States. And you know, while they were kind of oogling my daughter, I kind of slipped in my little.
You were oogling her leg while she was.
Yeah. So she was oogling my daughter. I was like oogling her leg, and so I kind of slipped in that I was a nurse. And then the husband was like, "Oh my goodness! Since we've been here, my wife has had trouble walking in with her leg," and I was just like, tell me more. So since they've been here, she's been saying that she's been having more. He was saying that she was having more trouble walking, that her leg was getting more and more swollen, that it was red. And I was like, oh, let me just keep asking questions. I'm like, keep talking. So I was like, you know, is one leg warmer than the other? Yes, it was warmer to touch. All sorts of things that were kind of going on with this leg that indicated to me that this person had a clot in their leg. So I was kind of like, you know, make sure that you go see the nurse here in Jamaica. Again, I actually spoke to the Nurses Association out in Jamaica, and I was just like, hey, you know, these nurses here, they're great. Make sure you go to the nursing station. And they're like, we did. And again, everything costs, right? So like just to consult the doctor was like $412 US. And he's like, I had no problem. I paid, but essentially there was like nothing that they could do. They're like, you have to go back to the US. And he's like, well, we're leaving in 2 days. And I was like, oh, okay. And off they went. And I sat there, and my husband came back to me. He's like, oh, you threw your nursing hat. And I was like, I know. And I'm like, and I'm so concerned because now she's got to fly with this clot. Like, I knew it was a clot. I didn't say that it was a clot. I just kind of was like, hey, here's some things that you should do. Elevate your leg. All of these different tips and tricks to kind of make sure that, you know, she's watching for any signs. If there's changes to, you know, her leg, let's say she started having issues with her lungs. So again, when we're thinking about clots and we're thinking about, let's say we see it in the leg, you know that from the leg, it can go to the lungs. So let's say there's issues with breathing, or she's coughing, changes of sputum, that she's having shortness of breath, all of these various different things in related to having, you know, a clot that might appear from, you know, from the leg and where it would go next. So I was like, here are the things to look for. If anything changes, still around, but make sure you go see the nurse. And they're like, okay. And of course, I was worried the entire time. I spoke to my husband about it. I was also there with my cousin. I spoke to her about it. And then we didn't see them for 2 days. It was just like, oh, everything must be fine. And then on the second day, when I guess the day that they were leaving, we were actually downstairs. I guess, like when you're at a resort, they have their communal breakfast. So we're like all getting breakfast. And I see her husband walking with her, and she's now in a wheelchair. And I'm like,
Oh, that's not good.
oh no,
Not good.
this is not any better. And I sat there with my family around the table, and I'm like, should I go up and say anything? And my cousin was just like, hey, I actually have some Spanx that might fit her. They're very tight, and it might just help with her having to travel and whatnot. So we devised a plan for me to go bump into them again
and give her some
Give her
Spanx.
some Spanx. So yes, it was super odd. So I walked up to them and I said, hey, I noticed that you're in a wheelchair now. Like, how's everything going? And he's like, things are not great. She's having even more difficulty. As you can see, she's in a wheelchair. And I did the weirdest thing. I was just like, hey, my cousin has some Spanx, which is a weird thing to offer, right? I'm offering I guess it's like personal underbody wear.
Yeah,
right?
you're
So I'm
right.
just
You're
like,
right.
hey,
Yeah.
would you like to wear my cousin's Spanx? Anyways, so I offered these Spanx to the couple, and he was like, yeah, you should take them. And she's like, oh no, they're probably too expensive. I don't. And we're like, the trade-off is actually pretty good. Like, you might survive versus having a clot. So she did agree, and we asked them to wait. So myself and my cousin, we ran up to the room. We went through her bag, and she had 2 different pairs. So I was like, hey, variety is the spice of life. And I have to give kudos to my cousin too. Her name is Janet, because she was down with being like, yeah, we need to help her. And I think that's the humanity that we want to see in the world, because it was actually her idea to say, hey, I might have some stretch wear that we could give her, because I was like, hey, maybe we could wrap her leg, anything. Anyways, so we get back down with the 2 different pairs of Spanx. She's almost on the brink of tears. Her husband's overjoyed. And I was like, you know what? It can't hurt. So, wear these on the plane, head back home. Make sure as soon as you get in that you see a doctor. They told me, but they had this grueling, like 13-hour flight or whatnot. And I was just like, oh God.
That would
just
actually make me so nervous.
I'm like,
even being on a plane that long, that could cause a DVT in
Well, I think they
itself,
had
right?
a layover. That's what it was. So it's like they had a flight, then a layover. And I was like, listen, as soon as you hit USA land, whatever, go and see a doctor. So we gave them the Spanx, and then that was it. I thought that was the end of the story. Actually, sorry, before that happened. So I gave them the Spanx. They were thankful. They're like, can we give you money? And I was like, no money. And they're like, are you sure? And I was like, no, I can't take your money. It's too odd. And I was like, and then an idea came to my head. And I was like, well, actually, I'm a nurse, like I told you. And I'm like, and we wrote a book. So if there's anything that I would like you to do is, how about you, if you can, here's the link to the Wisdom of Nurses, maybe pick yourself up a copy. That'd be supporting me, and that would be the best thing. And she's like, of course, I'm going to do that. Yes. And I thought that was the end of the story. So they went off, didn't see them again. I was worried sick the entire time. Our vacation played out, whatever the case may be. We got back home, and I got an email, and I was like, who's this? I saw the name. I didn't recognize the name.
Had you exchanged information, or did she
Nope.
look you up?
Nope. I sent her the link. So obviously her name is there on the cover of the book. But I was very surprised that I got email. Of course, I didn't recognize the name, because I don't even think I got their names. I don't know. They did, but I am so bad with names. So it's just like, oh. So like I saw the email come in, I saw the name, and I was like, oh, who is this? And then I read the email body, and I'll get our producer to pull it up here. And I'm just going to give you the Coles notes. And essentially it was the lady that I ran into in Jamaica. And she pretty much told me that she was so thankful that I had, reached out to her and said something, because when she arrived and they went to the doctor, she had 3 clots in her legs and was admitted.
Wow.
And it just gave me goosebumps, because just like that, we were able to, because what if she just went home and was like, hey, like, maybe it's just, this is the way it is. But they found that she had 3 clots. She was treated and had to stay, and then was being discharged. And she said that, that I was her little angel that came to her in a time where she was uncertain about her healthcare and was able to make a difference. So it really impacted me again. Oh God, I'm crying. It really impacted me, because I feel that like this is why we do what we do, right? As much as it was scary for me to have these really bizarre conversations, it was just important that I was able to say, hey, I was able to help someone. It wasn't even about me. It was the fact that I was super concerned. And sometimes I think we have this thing that we say, sometimes, if you see something, you should say something. And I'm really glad I did. She's glad that I did. And then she also said, she sent her book to other nurses. I was like, yes,
Yes,
spread the
always,
word.
always.
So, I mean, it turned out to be a good story where, she ended up getting care. And I hope to stay connected with this individual over time.
That is awesome. And I feel like this is an example of you listening to your inner voice to be like, I need to say something and I need to do something.
Trust me, I
and
didn't feel like saying anything.
But like,
yeah.
obviously, it was clear to you that there was something wrong with the leg. Like,
Yeah.
you saw her from far away, right?
Yeah, you could not miss the fact that one leg was visibly bigger than the other. Yeah.
That is crazy. I feel like this is where, you make a difference to someone's life in ways that you don't think you can, just by doing what nurses do, right? Like, we're always assessing, we're always making diagnoses, kind of. We're always wanting to help others, and even if you don't necessarily work in a traditional setting, you're still helping others all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's part of the beauty of being a nurse, and I think that's a really empowering story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Sarah. And I think the other piece to that is just like, I didn't give her a diagnosis of a clot. I just said, here are the things that might be happening. And I think the other piece that's really important is that, at the end of the day, what's the worst that could happen if I was wrong, right? And to say, hey, make sure that you go see a care provider, or, just have this conversation with her. There could have been nothing. Fine. Okay. Then there was nothing. But at the end of the day, there was something. So it's important that, sometimes we do take that little risk where it's just like, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? She goes and gets treatment and everything's fine, or she doesn't go. And then, the worst could have happened. And of course, like, again, and we're different worlds apart. I could have never seen her again. But again, I just had that feeling that I had to say something, and I'm glad that I did. And again, I guess I will continue having that little nursing head, because I just think that at the end of the day, we just need to do the best that we can. And even if I was wrong and nothing was wrong with her leg, I think still telling her to see a care provider and look after it is probably the best approach.
Right. And even if it wasn't a DVT, the fact is something was terribly wrong. Terribly wrong with her leg.
Yeah.
So whether it was like some other issue that we don't know about, I'm just glad that like someone said something and she was able to get the treatment she needed. I have a story which is a little bit different, but involves my son. So actually involves water too. So
damn this water now.
So I was on a cruise and we went to several different islands. And one of the islands we went to was a Disney owned island, because I went on a Disney cruise. Part of the appeal of the island is that there are like water activities, right? So there's like this, I don't know how to explain. It's almost like you swim out to this kind of little island that has like water slides and kind of like a splash pad. So like everyone was super excited. So we swam out there, and then we all went down this water slide, and it had kind of a big drop. So the first time we did it, I was not prepared. I went quite a bit underwater, and I was like, what's going on? I'm like swimming my way to the top. I'm like, I am like too old for this, but I kind of wanted to do it because I needed to make sure my kids are okay. So like after maybe the second or third time we did it, you go underwater and you kind of have to swim to the shore. So it's like a little bit of a swim, but there's like life jackets and stuff. So we all like had life jackets on. And then when we get to the shore, my son starts complaining. He's like, my leg really hurts. I'm having trouble walking. And he's like pointing to the back of his calf. And I'm like, I saw this tiny little red dot like this, right? Okay. So I'm like, maybe he got bit by a mosquito, but we've been in the water this whole time and I haven't really seen any mosquitoes, to be honest. And then we had to start making our way back to the boat. And it was probably like a 1 kilometer walk back, or like half a mile or whatever. So we start walking and he's like limping. Like at this point, he's holding onto my shoulder.
This
like
sounds like another story, Sarah.
Like all of his leg, like he's like not even weight bearing. And I'm like, what is going on? So like we had to be back at the boat. I would say like maybe there's like half an hour to go. Right. And then we're like, okay, let's just stop at this health clinic. And I use this term loosely, this health clinic. Because at this point, I don't even know what it is, but I'm like, obviously, he's pretty good with numbers. So I'm like, what's your pain from 1 to 10? He's always pretty good at telling me. He's like, I don't know, it's like a 6 or a 7. I'm like, well, that's not good, because obviously, like
significant.
Yeah, you're in pain and we need to figure out what this is. I don't think at this point it's a mosquito bite. So we go into this health clinic, and I wish I could describe it better to you, but I don't really remember because we were not there very long. So we go into this health clinic and there's like a desk. There's like a wooden desk. So you walk in the door, to the left, there's like a desk. And then there was a guy behind the desk, and we're like explaining what happened. Like he just went off the water slide. He's in a lot of pain right now. There's this little red mark on his leg. I'm not convinced to this day that this person was a nurse or even really maybe a regulated healthcare provider, because he literally didn't even get up from behind the desk. He didn't even do an assessment. He didn't ask like medical history, like how old my son was. He was like, oh, he's like, that's a jellyfish sting. And I'm like, what? Because no one had ever like even brought this up to us as a possibility. It wasn't like, hey, just be mindful. There are jellyfish in the water, or like if you have any pain, it could be a jellyfish. Like nothing was mentioned, right? So we're like, oh, we didn't realize these were jellyfish infested waters. Like the rest of us feel fine. Like, I don't know. And there were no signs anywhere, right, to mention this at all. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But anyway, he's like, it's a jellyfish thing. And we're like, oh, so, what should we do? He doesn't get up. He points at this bottle of spray at the end of the desk. He's like, just spray some of that on it. And we're like, well, what is it?
For all you know, what is in the bottle?
Right. Because my only knowledge of jellyfish is that episode of Friends
where
Monica gets stung by the jellyfish. And what do they have to do?
I know. You tell them.
So in the episode, if you're not a Friends fan, someone has to pee on Monica's leg to get rid of the pain from the jellyfish sting. So he points to this bottle of whatever, and he tells us that's vinegar. He's
please tell me the contents of the bottle was clear.
It was clear. It was clear.
Okay. Phew.
Can you imagine though?
It's like a yellow liquid bottle.
An unidentifiable yellow liquid.
Funny. Well, it would smell funny, especially if it was vinegar. Oh man, weird. Anyways.
So then he's like, just spray the leg and wait. He's like, it'll be fine in 15 or 20 minutes. But again, he doesn't get up to like even hand us the bottle. He just sits there expectantly. Like obviously we're supposed to be doing this, right? So I think my husband gets up and he sprays his leg, maybe like 5 to 10 sprays, because he also doesn't direct us like how much we should spray the leg. So we're like, let's just douse this because we obviously want this to get better. And he doesn't offer us like a place to sit. He doesn't tell us to hang around for 15 minutes. He's like, it should be fine. Like he doesn't say to go, but he also doesn't like invite us to stay.
Wow.
So like after a little bit of awkwardness, we're like, okay, I guess we'll go, right? Because we also have this time limit that we have to be back on the boat. So then he hobbles out of there. He's still like holding on my shoulder.
Oh my God.
And there was a bit of a wait to get back on the cruise ship. And we're also questioning, like, should we go see the nurse on the cruise ship? But knowing that there is a cost associated, and we're like, how bad is this really? Like, I don't know. And so during the time that we were waiting to get back on the boat, like, it did eventually subside.
Oh, that's crazy. So how much, like in terms of time, how long do you think?
I would say 15 to 20 minutes, just like this guy said. Because there was a bit of a wait to get back on the cruise ship, and it wasn't like he wasn't like in worse pain. So we weren't trying to like bump to the front of the line or anything. We're like, okay. So yeah, so that was the end of that.
That's crazy.
There's no furtherness to this story. Like he got better. It's not like he got worse and we had to be medevaced anywhere. It was really like whatever was in that bottle, vinegar, fixed this jellyfish.
As long as it was vinegar, right?
I mean, it didn't smell like anything else. I actually didn't even smell the bottle, to be honest. Like it could have been something else. But just so you know, if you get stung by jellyfish, just spray it with some vinegar, and that's what helped us.
Or if you don't have vinegar,
you know what?
Other things that you
apparently that's an old wives' tale. So maybe look that up before you do that.
Well, I mean, can't hurt. I guess if you don't have vinegar, but I mean that's so scary. Again, I think when you're on vacation, I think you just kind of hope for the best, right? You hope that you get to spend all the time that you want doing all the activities that you want to do, and that you don't get sick. But again, it seems like it's something that happens where it's like inevitable that someone's going to get sick.
And I found out later that like several other people had also gotten stung by jellyfish that day.
See, I think like Walt Disney or Disney Cruise Line, maybe you should have signs that there are jellyfish. And 2, maybe you should check on your healthcare workers to make sure that they, interact with the clients that are coming in that need help.
It could have been worse, because my vision of getting stung by jellyfish was like a lot worse than what actually happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, maybe it was a baby jelly,
a tiny little baby jellyfish. Yeah,
but again, like in the Caribbean, there's all sorts of different types of jellyfish. And then I think that's probably best case scenario. I've seen jellyfish stings where you look at the person's leg and I guess it's the tentacles, like
Oh my
you see all
gosh.
the like little red lines. And I think those are probably like, worst case scenario. But I'm glad that your son is
Yep.
doing better.
Yep. So we have two kind of good outcome stories, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so that's always good.
Attention hospital employees and retirees in Canada. Picture this: a benefit plan designed for casual and part-time hospital employees and retirees who aren't covered by their hospital's group health plan. Introducing Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, a friendly partner dedicated to your health and well-being.
With affordable plan premiums and an exceptional support team, Healthcare Providers, also known as HCP, is dedicated to helping you every step of the way. Enrolling is easy, and you'll have access to a wide range of health and basic dental benefits from day one.
Already have health and dental coverage through another group plan? HCP still has your back. For less than $32 a month, the Signature Package, which includes life, long-term disability, accidental death, disease, and dismemberment, provides valuable income protection and peace of mind for the unexpected.
So take charge of your healthcare and financial security today. Visit healthcareproviders.ca to learn more.
Amie, I know you have another story you need to share with
I
us.
do. Oh my gosh. So as much as I said this vacation was good, there were some issues with the vacation. And this was probably the scariest thing for me as we went out there. So we were actually put into a room at this hotel and they were doing renovations in the next room to us. It was really bizarre. So this was at the Hilton in Jamaica, Hilton Rose Hall. And they were doing renovations. And whatever paint or what I think they must use, like it was like a high VOC paint, so high volume of
I don't think
smell.
you even told me this story.
And it was so stinky. And then my daughter started coughing. I was like, okay, the baby, the 6 month old, and I was like, okay, we need to like move. So I called them. I had enough. I was like, you need to change this room. They're like, okay, we're gonna switch your rooms, send you to a beautiful side. So they send us to the golf course side, smashingly beautiful view. I'll pull it up here. But our troubles did not stop there. So I don't know what happened, but essentially, like, I don't know if it was due to some of the smells or whatever the case may be. We were outside that morning on the balcony. We woke up, nothing untoward had happened. And my kids were outside, and I always usually get them ready for the day by like, just put your swimsuits on. Like, we're just, we're going to hit the water at some point in time. So we're outside on the balcony. I asked my daughter to get her swimsuit on. My other two kids were sitting out there. And I asked everyone to come back inside because we need to go down for breakfast. And I believe my daughter grabbed the door to close it. And then I hear like a crash. Like, I look behind me and she's like laying in between the wall of the door and the suitcases. And I look at her and I'm like, hey, and she's like fully seizing.
Can you describe her face? Like, what did her face look like? Was she aware of what was happening?
She was definitely not aware of what was happening. She was like full tonic-clonic seizure. So like her hands are up and they were curled. Her head was fully like hyperextended and her eyes were kind of rolled in the back of her head. So I was like, holy shit. I'm like, Jordan, help. So he runs over and we kind of like, again, so this is where, sometimes I think when you're nursing other people, for me, I don't know, it's just something I just like kind of freeze up. So like other people, no problem. Like
when it's your own kid,
I could prop a strawberry out of some kid's mouth in no time at all, or, actively do CPR on a patient, whatever the case may be. But when it's your kid, it's just like the training is just like whew, out of the window. So my first thing was like, I know I need to get her down to the floor, but just all of the other like down to the floor, recovery, like none of that shit came out. I was just like, let me just get her away from the bin. So myself and my husband, we grabbed her, kind of laid her down towards the bed, and then we kind of laid her off down to the side. Like, and in all, I'd say it probably lasted maybe like 15 seconds or maybe even less, but it felt like a fucking eternity. I was just like, oh my God. And then when she came to, she opened her eyes, and of course we're over her, like freaked out, and she starts crying because she's like, I don't know what happened. She's like, I was closing the door and then now I'm on the floor. So we explained to her what happened, but then our whole vacation, we were terrified, and it was just by fluke that we brought some life vests with us because we thought we were going to do some boating stuff out there. And it kind of sucked for her because now the rest of the vacation, because we didn't really know what happened, she had spent the rest of the vacation in her life vest. Because I was like, what if she goes down the stairs or goes down the water slide and she like has a seizure, or she's swimming and has a seizure, because we didn't know what happened. But of course, when we got back home, and we spoke
because didn't you do something? You looked for some medical
went
care?
to go get medical care. And so this is the other scary part. When you're on vacation, if you don't have travel insurance, you will pay out of pocket. So we went down, we spoke to the nurse, and just to see the physician was, like I said, $412 but you had to pay before. So imagine that, like, you're in this dire situation, you go see the nurse and they're like, okay, so you have to pay first before we actually bring the physician in. And the physician's not on site. They have to call them to come. So I'm thinking of all the like worst case scenarios. And I was just like kind of drumming it over in my head. And I was like,
what if the payment doesn't go through? What if they refuse to see her?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we're just like, fine, we'll just get the physician to see her, We paid whatever it was. But now here's the struggle. So technically we're actually covered through our credit card. So through RBC, but we're kind of like, they said it should be covered, but like they're putting us through all these hoops because they made it seem like, oh, everything's easy peasy, because Jordan was on the phone with them for hours while we were waiting. Yeah, in the Caribbean. They're like, yeah, everything, submit your claim. But now they're like kind of giving us the runaround. So I'm like, are we covered or are we not? And if not, then like RBC, what the fuck? Like, hello, you said we're covered. Let's figure this out. But again, on vacation, you just want to have fun. You just want to go there
and be
enjoy,
safe.
be safe. And I think, again, like particularly when you're like, and I don't know if it's probably a little bit different in the US, but like when you're in the Caribbean or you're in these other types of countries, healthcare is very different out there. Like, I'm not even going to call balls and strikes. It's very, very different. And I'm not saying it's not different in the States, but it's just like, it's interacting with a whole new level, whole new system, and feeling fearful about like what could happen. Because we also had other stories where we heard, for example, I think this happened 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer, where my mom had a family friend who went out to Jamaica, and she was learning to swim. And I believe she had gone into a pool or something like that and ended up drowning. So they found out that she had dry drowning. So essentially the water was in her lungs or whatever the case.
Like she didn't drown right away, but it was afterwards.
So all that she needed in terms of treatment for dry drowning is oxygen, and they did not have oxygen tanks where she was in Jamaica. And they're just like $30,000 to fly you here, $10,000 for this, and then at the end of the day, they still didn't have the oxygen. And that's
I can't believe it. That is like so basic.
She died.
Wow,
so
that is scary.
It was like all these things kind of playing in the background, humming on the hard drive, and I'm just like, we need to get her the care, get the fuck out of here. I'm just like, I love this vacation, but now I'm not really loving it.
Just like in terms of time, was this like right in the middle of the vacation?
This was like we were there for 2 weeks, and I'd say this was like, because we spent a week one place and then we were spending the week at the resort. So I'd say this is like 3 days in.
Oh, so like the beginning part.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, three days in from the resort. We're staying at the resort. But it was just like, now we were super hyper vigilant and just worried, because I was like, okay, well, we could fly back, because she was like, I'm fine. Or do we just hang out? So like we had to like wrestle with that. So at the end of the day, we did end up staying. We brought her back here. And essentially when we went to see the doctor, and again, this is where I'm really frustrated with our own healthcare system in Ontario, because the wait for her to see a physician or even her family physician was like 3 weeks.
Right.
So after all that, we got to finally see our family physician, and we did tell them what happened. And they said it might have just been a vasovagal reaction. So maybe combined with the fact that she was already coughing from the smells from the other room coming up, and then maybe the door was too heavy, and she did the Valsalva maneuver. Essentially, she kind of like held her breath and bared down, made her black out. So
now, did your medical bills get covered by
RBC? Not yet. We're still waiting. RBC. I've called. You know what? We should just call this episode RBC Vacation Destruction.
Oh God.
But yeah, no, we're still waiting.
Oh no.
So hopefully, like, again, this is where they said they provide medical coverage. This is not a pre-existing condition. So let's wait and see what they have to say.
See, like being in Canada, I feel like the story that you just described, I'm like, this is what I envision going down to the States and potentially needing medical care. Like, I don't know if it's the same, but I'm like, in terms of the payments and the insurance, I feel like you said, Jordan spent hours on the phone when he should have just been there with Emily, helping all of you, but he couldn't, right? Because he had to deal with all this, literally dealing with this paperwork when I feel like that should have been a non-issue. Like, you had the insurance, you did everything you were supposed to. You're back, you've been back for a while now, and you're still going through the hoops to try and get reimbursed for something.
Yeah, she also had swimmer's ear. I totally forgot about that. She also had swimmer's ear, which we had to treat out there. And yeah, it's all a part of this bill that we're waiting for coverage for. So it's just, a matter of time, RBC, to get our money back, like you said in your contract, that you actually cover these expenses. So still waiting to hear from you. Hopefully we hear something positive. But again, it's just, I think that's the fear that anybody has, that you travel away from home, your child or you get sick, that you might not get the care that you needed. And I think that for me is definitely the scariest thing that could potentially happen.
Yeah, actually what I heard, so I was on like one of the cruises, there's like a Facebook group, there was a WhatsApp group. So I had heard, like, when we were about halfway through our cruise, that there was a couple on the ship and the husband actually had appendicitis.
Oh, damn.
So he developed appendicitis. Our cruise actually went to several different islands. When we got to, so he started developing symptoms, but our first stop was, let me just make sure I get the right island. I believe it was the British Virgin Islands. They did not have the facilities to perform an appendectomy.
Okay.
So
no.
he has what they believe, like, pretty strongly, that is burst appendix. The first island obviously did not have the facilities to do what I consider to be a basic procedure, right? Like, we're not talking about open heart surgery. We're talking about taking out someone's appendix. So they didn't have the facilities. So they waited. So we got to our second stop, which was the US Virgin Islands. And basically they got off the ship and stayed there, because, like, obviously he had to have surgery, and they remained on this island for, I think, a week afterwards. So obviously they couldn't get back on the cruise ship. They had to find their own way home. He's fine now from what I heard. I don't know bill wise what was covered, what wasn't, but to me it was like, can you imagine knowing that you have a burst appendix and having to wait 2 or 3 days to get to the next stop so they can even perform this surgery?
No, that'd be horrifying. That'd be like,
or like if you were the
what
nurse,
if it was getting worse, or the person was getting really more septic, like,
or if you were the nurse looking after this couple, knowing that you've done everything you possibly can, and you also have to get this patient through to the next stop so they can get off and have this surgery.
Hells no.
Like,
hells no.
I'm like,
no.
Wow, I just can't imagine. These are the things that I always think of as, I'm like always thinking about worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, what if that had been me? What if this had been my family? Like, how would I feel about not having the care I needed?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you think that being somewhere, you always have the accessibility, and, like, I know our medical system isn't perfect, but having something like appendectomy, like an emergency one, is typically something
they do it pretty quick.
You can get, right? But to have to wait 3 or 4 days and not even knowing the level of care that you might receive, I think that would just drive me insane.
Yeah, you bring up another really important part here for this episode, was the fact that we do talk a lot about our healthcare system here in Ontario, here in Canada, and just kind of even sometimes we hit on the US and various different countries. And one of the things that we talk about, that we have challenges, but it's like sometimes, and I felt this way, when we look at the challenges of, other countries, like the Caribbean or even the US or other places, that's just like, I kind of felt almost guilty. Like, how can we complain when, for example, some basic things that we take for granted in our system aren't covered, or, they're asking you for $10,000 first before it's done, or whatever the case may be. And I actually had the opportunity to have a conversation with one of the nurses in Jamaica, and she was just like, yeah, it's not great in terms of, what's provided and the care and the outcomes. And I even heard that there was times that nurses were working and they weren't being paid. So they had done all their work. And for whatever reason, they weren't getting their paychecks, and then they had to like fight to get their paychecks. And I'm just like, you know what? Like
we talk about not being paid enough, but not being paid at all
is a whole other thing. Right. So it's just kind of like, I think this is where maybe when we continue to tell stories, and I hope maybe we could do a little bit better job, is like, yes, we have challenges here, but what does it look like across the board? What does it look like, in the Caribbean? What does it look like in other places where we take for granted that we yes, we have challenges, but like, wow, go travel to, you know, another country and you need their healthcare and you're like, holy shit. Like, what is happening?
It also
here,
makes
right?
me think, like, as a tourist, right? You're probably getting a higher level of care. I know you're probably getting a higher level of care than people that live there, right?
100%.
So, and if we're saying the level of care was not up to standard, like, what is happening to the actual citizens of these countries that can't pay, that don't have access to what we do? And, you know, as a tourist, they want you to come back. And if this is the best they can provide you, what is everyone else getting?
Yeah, that is a really good question, Sarah. And I think you're 100% right. Like, I think that's probably the biggest and most concerning part, that, you know, like you said, we are kind of looking at the level of care, saying it's substandard. And then if it's just like, if we see it substandard, the people are probably suffering, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, again, this is where you see that wealth inequality, where, again, I think I noticed it too, where in Jamaica particularly, either you are poor or you have money or you're wealthy. There's not really that in between middle class like we see here. It's just like poor folks and rich folks. And I think that goes to say with other Caribbean provinces, places as well, where it's just like that wealth gap is so wide. There needs to be something done, and we need to change how that looks. And again, we see the inequalities in the States too, where again, your income is determined by the type of job, and your insurance is determined by the type of job you have, and it shouldn't be. I think that, you know, healthcare should be universal. I believe that I hope that we'll see better reforms of care, because it's a scary place right now for all of us, particularly for women and women's rights in terms of healthcare. And I think that, you know, we need to see more advocacy across the boards from, you know, a national and international standards. So hopefully we'll pitch and throw our voices in for more, you know, sustainability and better healthcare across the world.
Anything else you wanted to add, Amie?
Get travel insurance. Get your travel insurance. I think that's probably the biggest part that I have to maybe put in. Like, I used to be that person that you see the little box like, add travel insurance for 23 whatever, and I'm like, hells no, I'm not spending an extra $23 per
So
ticket.
what made you want to get travel insurance this time?
I just the fact that you're dealing with all the rigmarole and you know, all the bureaucracy, and I just think I'd really want that peace of mind, particularly now that I have a 6-month-old as well. It's just at this point, the travel insurance is like key, and even just the ability to cancel your ticket and change it. I think that that's also something I'd say. I think, you know, we're seeing all these various different forms of airline fees or airline tickets, where you can get like basic, econo, whatever. Just make sure you know that depending on the type of flight that you choose. So like if you pick ultra basic, you can't change your ticket. You won't get a refund. There's no travel insurance with that. So also be mindful of the type of tickets that you buy. Of course, if you, like, you know, it's a risky game. Most people, I'd say, probably travel econo or ultra basic econo, but know that like there's no change of flights. It's
like
know your tickets when you purchase them too.
We actually delayed booking our trip because we wanted to get a new credit card that had travel insurance on it. I actually thought all my credit cards did.
No,
and
they don't.
I called them and I was shocked that none of them did. I'm like, oh, this is clearly not a standard in credit cards anymore. We literally applied for a new credit card, waited for it to come in. It's also RBC.
Is it the Avion?
Yes.
Yep.
So we literally waited
RBC.
for this new travel card to come in before we booked our trip, just because like it was quite a bit of money, and there's all 4 of us, and I don't want to take any risks when it's my family. So I totally get what you're saying as well.
Get the insurance. And now duty calls. I hear my baby calling. So this is the end of this episode. If you like what you heard, please listen, like, and subscribe. Again, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Am I missing anything?
I think we're good. And don't forget, our Wisdom of Nurses book is out. It's in hard copy, ebook, and audiobook for all you nurses out there that are busy. So don't forget to check that out as well and leave us a review.
Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Bye now.